talking about time and space earlier, one of the things, and I think that's really important to know, you may, because of course feng shui comes a lot from your external environment. It's a huge part of your feng shui, and I think it gets overlooked a lot because people are so focused on inside their home because you spend that time inside your home. But I think what people don't realize too, talking about, the time and space, timeliness and everything, when those yearly afflictions come in, when different stars come in, it can actually be aggravated by negative external features, really in close proximity to you. So yeah, I just kind of wanted to touch on that because I think a lot of people don't realize feng shui is not forever.
No, absolutely. And also when you talk about time and space and outside afflictions, or, where you're, that one of those examples is, where you're supposed to dig or renovate or not.
Oh
And I
yeah, that's
remember,
big.
of course, I always like to, put it in perspective for clients and say, listen, of course, there are many things that contribute to life's experiences. And I always remind them of, the cosmic trinity, that there is heaven luck, there's earth luck, and then of course there's, the person luck. But I'll never forget the time that one of my, dear longtime feng shui clients, I have feng shuied her homes. I feng shuied and relocated. I first met her when I relocated her when she had a great flood. She lives in the southern tier of Western New York, and a great flood came through and pretty much washed away her office, along with many other offices in the southern tier. And one of her friends had said, you should really meet Linda Ellson, and you should really select an office that will be auspicious for you and won't get washed away in the great flood.
Great
And
advice.
so I helped her shop for a new location. Again, this has been going on for a number of years. We shopped for a new location after that flood happened. So I do annual updates of her home and her business, but I'll never forget the time that with her home, I don't remember what year it was, but it was in the east. It was like one of the no digging zones. Maybe it was like that was where the Grand Duke was for the year, or maybe that was the Samsat energy. But again, it's like, whether you know about Grand Duke or Samsat or not, and you're listening, it's just kind of like don't do the experiment. Although you mentioned that you're studying with a master currently in Singapore. I remember I had one from Singapore many years ago, and he would joke, he'd say, well, master, what happens if I disturb the Grand Duke, or I actually, do that renovation? He would say, I don't know. Why don't you go do that? You come back and you tell me about it. And I'm thinking, I am not going to do that experiment. But
Yeah,
the
yeah.
story goes like this. I remember that my client had this beautiful, huge porch at the front of her house. It was a ranch style home. And she had this gorgeous, like flagstone, I'll call it flagstone. It was a stonework on her porch. I don't know why they would have thought to change it, but one day it was her live-in boyfriend at the time, and one of his buddies decided to surprise her, and they took a jackhammer and they started jackhammering and breaking up the flagstone on her front porch to pour something new. And she called me and she said, Linda, remember when you told me like no digging, no renovating, no blah 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 in the east this year? She said, Kissy just did this with his friend and hammered. And I just said to her, you know what? She goes, what can I do? And I'm like, well, I'm going to kind of tell you, well, you could pray, you could smudge, but really, that's a really big disturbance, and it was really interesting. And of course, disclaimer, right? Many things contribute to life's experiences, but they were an interesting couple. Let's just say that to begin with. But honestly, they did break up about maybe 6 months after that. They were definitely on the edge, but it really created and wreaked havoc, on the home front. And yeah, that is just right. So there are definitely rules, to do's, to don'ts in any given year, or as you would know, in any given month, whether it's renovating at this level or delivering certain news or giving a talk. You can really do that effectively. There's some nicer things to experiment with it, right, than doing a big change with a jackhammer. But I have seen it happen. And although I will share this too, and I don't remember the exact details, time marches on, but with my own mother, right? So you hope that as practitioners, we can have influence over our family members. So my mother's been a great experimenter with me, again, going on 19 years. But I remember one time, one morning she called me and she said, Linda, you will not believe this, but the town has trucks outside my house at the foot of my driveway. And again, this was in the Southeast, and that was a sector a few years ago that was like, don't dig, don't renovate. Probably after my client's jackhammer experience in the East, it follows a progression every year. And
Yeah.
she said, and they are digging up the mouth of my driveway. And I said, oh my gosh, I'm like, did you get a note, in a letter, an email, and anything from the town that said, hi, we're going to be digging and, with a bulldozer your driveway? She said, no, I didn't get anything. And again, it was well, what can I do? Right. So, like some traditional practitioners, just depending on, the level of the study and whatever, will say, well, if you're thinking you're going to dig or renovate in there, some will say, you can hang a 6 hollow rod metal wind chime between the house and the area where the digging is being done. So I said to her, I'm like, I think it's going to be a little too late, but I can come over and I can come hang a wind chime on your porch, and we're going to pray. And I don't remember the exact thing. I think she had like a little, it wasn't that bad, but I remember I think she had a little health thing that came up. And I guess it didn't overly surprise me. I felt like we got it under control. But again, those are things I wouldn't electively, experiment with. But I do have a healthy respect for the energy, both on on a positive level and the not so great, Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I really think that I want to do a series of some stories about like in Feng Shui energy gone wrong too. Because
Yeah, I guess I
I
just told a bunch
definitely
of
have a
them.
story. Yeah, I definitely have stories. And I think one for my most was me, because we start experimenting on ourselves, and in 2018, so the 5 star was sitting, it was the sitting of my house, it was north, and it would moved, I think, north south that year. It was, but I don't know if you've experienced this, but my house is on that north south axis, and man, those 2 years are probably the worst, like, in terms of like emotional, and then we went ahead and decided we were going to renovate, because I didn't know a lot about, aggravating some of those energies. I hadn't done date selection yet. I just thought, okay, well, I know the great sun formula. I know it's like, in my house, but other practitioners say even when your house is under the great sun, if the sitting of your house is on the 5, don't do it. And that's the year we did it. And
Yeah,
yeah, I'll say that it's definitely a learning experience. I think there is definitely an affinity of when the city comes in and they start digging in your alley, or they start digging in your street. There's something there. Our neighbors moved in a couple years ago, and they just started putting up fences everywhere. Like, they redid their fences. We can't control that, but
no,
we can, as practitioners, though. Again, you kind of mentioned almost like an acupuncture to your home. You can activate certain areas within the home to give a little bit better energy, but sometimes
absolutely.
what happens just happens. Yeah.
And I'll tell you real quick how I got into that and kind of really teaching. Um, uh, Talk about the helpful people sector. One of my cousins worked at a corporation where 2 of her colleagues were opening up a wellness center. This is like maybe around the year like 2003. And I had been a practitioner maybe for a year or two. And again, if anyone would ever have told me I'd become a teacher or a public speaker, I just would never have believed them. And she said, oh, Linda, 2 of my colleagues are really awesome women. They just opened up this wellness center, and, they're having practitioners come in and teach. I think you should teach a class on feng shui. And I said, oh my gosh. I'm like, no, I really couldn't do public speaking. I took that in college, and that didn't go so well.
Can be
But
scary.
I met, she's like, just meet these ladies. They're very cool. And she goes, if nothing else, she goes, they probably would be interested in your services for their new wellness center, and they could probably refer clients to you. Right. So I said, okay. So I met them, and they just said, how about you just teach a basic class on feng shui? It'll just be, we're just growing here. It'll just be a small group. So I did. I taught my very first class on feng shui, introduced people to the Bagua map and the idea of working with elements. And it was 2003. And again, for people who practice traditional classical feng shui, we were about to have a big energy change. So already with my clients, I knew I had to look at what was the pattern of energy in the period of 7 that they were working with. Some were already saying, hey, I'm thinking about renovating my kitchen. And I would say, well, listen, maybe you got to get that in motion now, or maybe we need to wait till 2004, February 4th, 2004 kicks in. So I already had to start doing this analysis for my clients. And I thought, oh my God, people need to know about this thing. So I thought, well, I need to put a class together and teach people about this energy change in 2004 called the period of 8 and how it's going to impact them. So that was my very first annual energy class that I took. And I have to say, people kind of loved it. And I started doing annual updates of people's homes. And then it's become this annual tradition since 2004 that I've been teaching this annual energy class. So do the math on that period. We're in period of 8, then period of 8 came in 2004, 2024 is becoming period of 9, which we're already starting to feel. So, and, like so many practitioners, right? And I know some of our International Feng Shui Guild members were already very savvy, and I think you're one of them. You were kind of online. I was not one of them, but I thought, when the pandemic hit, well, first of all, it was just like, how can I serve my clients? How can I help? Everybody was panicking, right? So many of us, and I'm in New York. We had we were the forerunners with the wave going on. And
I'm in Texas.
I thought, well, I don't know what's going to be happening in January when I teach my class. I better really quickly get online, see how I can serve, how can I help? And of course, well, we were shut down again in New York this past January, and it went virtual. And I do have clients that have, moved all over the country or, living abroad, and they loved it because they could, again, now they can finally attend classes online. So, one of my clients too called it the bless and the mess, right? There were just many hidden blessings for many of us. So for me, definitely that was the bless and the mess. Also, with, doing consultations, not only in person, and over the years I've traveled, and I've also traveled nationally and internationally for consultations, but the bless and the mess, learning things like Zoom and being able to do Zoom consultations with people as well. So it really has opened up a lot of avenues. And I think one of the final things I'll say about the period of 8, for those of you who don't know about the period of 8, that has just really fascinated me over time, is the period of 8, in my interpretation of it, has been about the Northeast and knowledge and education and how it is transmitted. And it's also the development of inner wisdom. So I think that we've seen a huge growth in awareness and interest, since 2004, with a lot of these alternative topics, including feng shui or meditation, or, like yoga studios being on every corner, being so popular online. You get the idea, just kind of starting to be woven into mainstream society. And then, of course, we're in accelerated time. So it's kind of like the remote, right? We're on the fast forward button to period of 9 beginning in 2024. But this past year, with the knowledge and the learning that we all had to scramble, and so many school children to college ages to people like us learning, and workers and staff meetings all became a new way of communicating and educating through a vehicle like this, electronics and Zoom. Or researchers will lump that too, finding cures to the incurable. We know the subtext to that. So I say we are really living in fascinating times. So stay tuned for what's coming in period of 9, but it's going to be about the unfoldment of more spirituality. And I think that the wisdom, and it's the wisdom of the year of the ox too, that there's a lot going on. And if we can channel that and turn it into a higher power, or whatever that is, again, many different ways to the mountain, from meditating to good old fashioned prayer, or just being still a little bit in a day, can really help.